Hey everyone, welcome back to the Colonel Channel. I am your self-proclaimed commander, Lieutenant Colonel Lee R. Wolfgram, and I'm also a criminal defense attorney here in beautiful downtown Minneapolis. And today we're going to talk about the case against P-Diddy, Sean Combs. And it is something where in the onset here I want to say this. Regardless of what the allegations are or how horrific they are, everyone under the Constitution is entitled to bail. And in this particular case, Mr. Combs is going to be making his third argument for bail. It appears that there's a new judge. But look, so long as you can assure the court that you will return to court to stand and face the charges against you or defend against them, and as long as you can assure that the public is safe, then bail should be afforded to every person, because all of us are presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. And evidence against you is not the proof that they're talking about. They're talking about when a jury decides that that evidence applies to the facts and the crime. And until that time, you should be afforded bail, bond, release under conditions. That's not what's happening here. But on the other hand, the allegations are very serious against Mr. Combs here. In fact, life sentences are in the possibility. That's a possible outcome here, is a life sentence. And with that said, I think he's entitled to the presumption of innocence for the purposes of establishing bail. Now, the court of public opinion may lead to something completely different, but judges should not be in the court of public opinion. With that said, we're going to start off with Mr. Combs' attorney's standpoint, and we'll listen to that, and then we'll kind of go into, there was a little movie that Sean Combs made called Get Him to the Greek, and unfortunately I cut that up and I put it aside some of the allegations that are brought forth by the U.S. Attorney for the District of New York, and it doesn't sound good. With that said, let's hear what his attorney has to say about Mr. Combs.
Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person, but is not criminal. To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with the investigation. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court.
And with that said, if any of these allegations are proven by the evidence that they have or will continue to get as some of these civil cases come to light, he's in big trouble, because he might lose this and lose big.
Biggest loser time. It's biggest loser time.
Now, what we have here is Mr. Fucked. Mr. Fucked is a former client of us here at the Wolfgram Law Firm. Real smart guy, was a valedictorian during high school, and I sent the evidence to him, and he reviewed the evidence. He called me back and he said, let me understand this. I think I got it. So the more the evidence against me, the more likelihood that I'm going to be convicted. I said, absolutely. And he said, the more evidence against me and the more serious the evidence is, the more likely that I'm going to have a greater consequence. I said, yes, both of those things happen simultaneously. I said, it's so refreshing to talk to a client that understands how the evidence would be used. And he says, really, is that a problem? I said, yeah, a lot of times people just won't want to grasp the evidence. And he says, you know what, I'm going to develop a tool that illustrates how, as the evidence builds, so does your exposure for A, liability in terms of being found guilty, and B, liability in terms of the potential consequences as a result of that. And we're going to jump in and see, we're going to hear what the district attorney, the U.S. attorney for the District of New York, has to say about the allegations and about the evidence and how they have arrived at these charges. Let's watch.
Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City.
I need you to put this into your bottom hole.
He seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs. More than 1,000 bottles altogether.
He wants me to put drugs up my ass, and I don't know what to do. Then you put the drugs up your ass.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, facilitated the freak-offs, booked the hotel rooms, and stocked them with the supplies.
You know what you signed up for?
Drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting.
To put this deep in your arsehole.
And to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers.
Okay, so I want you to just look at the dial down here, and so you see everything that's been alleged so far is all legal. You can do all this stuff legally. In fact, some people do. What that's called is consent. So the issue then becomes is when there is not consent. And when there's not consent, we quickly go into criminal conduct. And you will hear as the allegations mount and the commensurate evidence mounts, so does the dial move in the direction. Now, what you'll see here is the yellow. That is where there's actually a crime. Now, when you get to the light orange, that's where incarceration, jail, is likely. As you get into the dark orange, that's where prison is likely. And as you get into the red, long prison sentences are likely. And when you're totally fucked on this meter, that means that you're looking at life imprisonment. So watch the meter as the evidence comes in, and you'll be able to see how this dial works.
And he often electronically recorded them.
Oh, yeah. Do not electronically record crimes. That would make you a dumbass if you're the one doing it and the one being charged with a crime. Don't do it. I don't know where people get this in their mind that recording a crime is in any way ever a good idea from the standpoint of the person who is guilty of that crime, or at least will be accused of the crime.
The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB.
And as you see here now, we go into the yellow because now the drugs are illegal drugs, criminal activity, and jail time now are a possibility.
Which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant.
It's only a little bit of heroin in your ass. Nobody's gonna die.
And the government alleges these freak-offs were not consensual.
Oh, there goes the defense. So I would imagine that consent, if they have evidence of these things occurring, I would imagine that the defense is going to be consent. This is not illegal activity so long as they're consenting adults. But if this is true where there was not consent, now we've got criminal liability that attaches, and attaches in a big way. Okay, now here you go ahead and read here, but I want to point something out here that is not going to be in the mainstream press because it's just not ready for prime time, and that is freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. So this is the problem. This demonstrates this was for his own sexual objective, and this is recorded. Again, bad idea.
And he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs.
Please don't make me do that.
Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal.
When we're talking about days or weeks, also another thing I wanted to point out that's actually in the indictment. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. That's one hell of a party.
You are now in the power position. You hold all the power in your ass.
He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims.
He will do whatever you want him to do.
He maintained control over the victims by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunity, and monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance.
What's the problem?
Special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs' residences in Miami and Los Angeles.
That's a problem.
They also executed a warrant for Combs' electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment.
That's a big problem.
It was the electronic evidence that led to Diddy's charges.
They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims.
So these same recordings that were once used to keep victims quiet are now being used to prosecute Diddy in a sex trafficking scheme that goes back decades.
And Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media.
You mean like this?
This video obtained by CNN begins as she enters the hallway. The complaint says, as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. The complaint goes on to say, he grabbed her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her. In the surveillance video, Combs can be seen grabbing Ventura and throwing her to the ground. As Ventura lies on the ground, Combs then kicks her twice and attempts to drag her on the floor back to the hotel room. Ventura is seen picking up a hotel phone. Combs seems to walk back to the hotel room, then returns and appears to shove her in a corner. Moments later, he can then be seen throwing an object in her direction. According to Ventura's now settled lawsuit, the pair began dating several years after they met in 2005.
Now, I will say this. You see now the factor down there, and you see the dial. As you see this evidence, this evidence is very, very damaging. And if additional evidence is this way, guess what? There's some serious liability here.
The staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet, pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee.
Yes, that's what we do. This is the opportunity that you've been waiting for.
Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
P-Diddy makes a third attempt to be released on bail, and this time it could actually happen. A new U.S. District Court judge has been appointed to the case, and now it's going to be up to him whether Diddy is released. Meanwhile, he's still behind bars in a Brooklyn jail that, according to his attorneys, has deplorable conditions. 4-year-old Sean P. Diddy Combs is entering his 4th week behind bars, being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. It's a far cry from his lavish life and mansions in Miami and Los Angeles, but ironically, it was the evidence collected at those mansions that put Diddy in jail in the first place. Tony Busby revealed he's planning to file 120 new civil lawsuits against Diddy with even more shocking allegations.
And so you see, as these additional civil suits come in, there will be more evidence that will be available to be introduced against Mr. Combs.
These lawsuits will apparently include allegations of child sex abuse, too. In one case, a kid as young as 9 years old. And
if that's the case, he needs to go to prison for life, because that's just the child victim, which would be added to the adult victims, I'm sure. And here's the thing, if you go to jury and they start to bring in these child allegations, the jury will turn on you and begin to hate you and start to try to defend the child to assure that you pay the price.
Jail is notoriously dangerous and run down. Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, argues there are major issues with the jail, citing violence, poor conditions, overcrowding, and even staffing issues. He also cited some startling statistics. 2 inmates have been killed at MDC since June, and at least 4 inmates have died by suicide over the past 3 years. On top of that, 6 staff members have been charged with crimes over the past 5 years.
6 staff members of this jail were charged with crimes. So what that means is we've got criminals overwatching the criminals, and we heard that 2 people were killed. We heard that suicides occurred. And so what we're finding here is that this is not a safe place. Now remember, regardless of what you may think about the allegations, regardless of the amount of evidence, there isn't any such thing as presumed almost guilty. So it doesn't have anything to do with the amount of evidence. You're either guilty or you're not guilty. And if you're presumed not guilty, then you should be afforded bail. Everyone should be afforded bail. And it shouldn't be in the degrees of how much evidence there is. I guess the idea here is if you can assure that the public is safe by giving some sort of restriction, GPS, a security detail, whatever it is, you can make sure that the public is safe. You could give him house arrest. You could know exactly where he is every single minute. And that also would prevent him from escaping and assuring that he would return to court, in addition to the millions of dollars that he would put up to essentially assure that he is not going to leave behind all of his assets. Very unlikely. And so I agree with his defense counsel. He should not be placed as a presumed innocent man into an environment where he's facing danger.
And isn't he innocent until proven guilty? Well, yeah, but we have to recognize there are degrees of innocent until proven guilty. When you have this much evidence and so much stuff out there, does that affect the judge's decision whether to grant bond or not? There's no way. They can't move in the general population. And would he be at risk? Sure, he'd be at risk. There's so many people that have nothing to lose, right? They're going to be in jail the rest of their life. They've got nothing to, they want their 15 minutes of fame. They were friends with Diddy, or they hurt Diddy, or they killed Diddy, or they did. I mean, there's so many, people in jail that this would be their moment. You can't put him there.
And you can't put him there. You cannot put him in an environment where he's presumed innocent when you can't even control the criminals that work there. Okay, well, I wanted to make this introduction. If you like this kind of stuff, be sure to like, make a comment, let me know you want to see more, and we can follow this case. Until the next time, this is Lieutenant Colonel Wolfgram at the Wolfgram Worldwide Headquarters out here.